Hello there. I hope you're interested in Merry Wives of Windsor, because today I'm going to talk about that play and a very knotty problem indeed. From this scene, if you recognise it, this is Act 4, Scene 2, when the fat, lascivious old knight, Sir John Falstaff, seen here, escapes from Ford's house disguised as an old woman. He's come to meet Mistress Ford and Mistress Page, who are, I think, these two ladies here. And Ford, Mistress Ford's jealous husband, returns and beats Falstaff out of the house, although Falstaff is dressed as an old woman. So, who am I? My name is Brett Jones, and I've had a paper published on what I've called the very knotty problem in Merry Wives of Windsor. This was published in Notes and Queries in June of 2025, and I'm going to use this video to explain what I wrote in this paper. So, in this video, I'm going to discuss that knotty problem. First of all, what is the problem? Secondly, where does the knot come from? The problem revolves around the word not, and I need to answer where the knot comes from. Then I'll talk about my solution to the problem, and finally explain why my solution fits so well. So first of all, what is the knotty problem? In Act 4, Scene 2, the Merry Wives have tricked Falstaff into coming to Mistress Ford's house for a second time. Previously, on a previous visit, Falstaff had to escape from Mistress Ford's jealous husband by hiding in a laundry basket, from which he was promptly dumped into the river. This time, Falstaff will escape again, but suffer another humiliation as he does so. So when Mistress Ford and Mistress Page learn that Mr. Ford is approaching, they persuade Falstaff to disguise himself, this time as an old woman. Mistress Ford's maid's aunt has left a gown in the house, which Falstaff can use as part of a disguise to escape the house. You can see here some of the dialogue. Mistress Ford says, "Oh, my maid's aunt, the fat woman of Brentford, has a gown above." Mistress Page says, "Oh, that will serve him. She's as big as he is. And there's her thrummed hat and her muffler too. Run up, Sir John, get dressed, and you'll be able to escape from Ford in this disguise." The only problem is that Mr. Ford hates that fat old aunt, and he's vowed to beat her if he sees her again. This is why he beats Falstaff, even though Falstaff is in a disguise. The disguise is the fat old woman of Brentford, and Mr. Ford hates the fat old woman of Brentford and has vowed to beat her. The question is, does Mistress Ford want to see her husband beat Falstaff here? Now, we have plenty of grounds for believing that Mistress Ford does want Mr. Ford to beat Falstaff. You can see, as they are getting ready, as Falstaff is being disguised, Mistress Ford says, "Oh, I would. I hope my husband would meet him in this shape, disguised as the fat old woman. He can't abide that old woman of Brentford. He swears she's a witch, forbade her my house, said she can't be here, and hath threatened to beat her." So Mistress Ford knows of Ford's antipathy towards the old woman of Brentford. She knows that Falstaff is going to dress up as that character, and she wants her husband to meet him dressed up like that. She knows it could lead to a beating, and she's very happy to see this happen. Also, as the beating is taking place, so we can see here Ford saying, "I'll hit her. Out of my door, you witch, you hag, you baggage." He thinks Falstaff is the old woman of Brentford, and he's chasing her out of the house. Mistress Page now says, "Are you not ashamed, Mr. Ford? I think you have killed the poor woman." Are you not ashamed? She is trying to shame Ford, but Mistress Ford has a different response. "Nay, he will do it. 'Tis a goodly credit for you." But she seems to be more approving of her husband's actions. And then after the beating takes place, Mistress Page says, "Oh, trust me, Ford, beat him, Falstaff, most pitifully. Mistress Ford is happy enough to make a joke at this point. She says, "No, by the mass, he didn't. He beat him most unpitifully, methought." So by taking Mistress Page's pitifully and unpitifully, making it into unpitifully, she's creating a pun, a joke. She seems to be in high spirits after seeing her husband beat Falstaff. It seems to have made her happy to see this. Mistress Ford wants to see this happen. Before the beating, she said, "I hope my husband will meet Falstaff dressed like this, because he threatened to beat the old woman of Brentford if he sees her." During the beating, she says, "He will do it. 'Tis a goodly credit for you." And after the beating, she's joking, "Oh, no, not pitifully. He beat him most unpitifully." So then, what is the problem? Mistress Ford 3 times says she wants to see her husband beat Falstaff. The problem is this line. So, Ford is yelling about the old woman of Brentford. This is during the beating. And Mistress Ford says, "Nay, good, sweet husband, good gentleman, let him not strike the old woman." Suddenly, she's asking the other men who've accompanied Ford back to the house, she's asking them to prevent Ford from beating Falstaff. Although she has 3 times said that she would like to see this happen. Let him not strike the old woman. Why is she suddenly expressing a contrary opinion? 3-1. Well, when there is such a discrepancy, we can consult the source material, and this can maybe shed some light on the matter. In this instance, it certainly does. The source material I'm talking about is the 1623 first folio. It's the first time that this version of the play is printed, and here we have this moment. So Ford says, "Come down, you witch, you hag, you come down, I say." Falstaff, dressed as the old woman, coming down, and Ford begins to beat him or her. Mistress Ford says, it's the first time the play has ever been printed, Mistress Ford's line is, "Nay, good sweet husband, good gentleman, let him strike the old woman." There is no knot in the earliest version of this line, and without the knot, this fits with the 3 other times in the same scene where Mistress Ford expresses approval of the idea of her husband beating Falstaff. So that's why I need to ask, where does the knot in that sentence come from? The word knot first appears in the 4th printing of the Merry Wives of Windsor in 1630. This was a printing of the play on its own, published by Richard Meehan. Here we go, there's the 1630 printing. As we can see, Richard Meehan calls this newly corrected. It's certainly been changed, because in 1623, in the first folio, that line was printed without the knot. And for Richard Meehan, now in 1630, we have the newly inserted knot in that line. So I'm talking about the 4th printing of the Merry Wives of Windsor, and I've talked about the 1623 first folio printing. What about the other 2? The first and second printings of this play were from 1602 and 1619. 1619 is basically a copy of the 1602 version, and these are very different from the folio version. So different, in fact, that we don't need to worry about them for this, because they were such drastically different versions of the play, and they lack entirely the particular lines I'm talking about. So they have nothing even closely resembling Mistress Ford's "let him beat the old woman." The 3rd printing, the 1623 folio version, was an official collection of all Shakespeare's plays produced by colleagues of Shakespeare after his death in 1616. It has high provenance, so that version of that line seems to be highly authoritative. There we have a picture of the start of it from the first folio. Nevertheless, after that 1623 version, the 1630 printing was a copy of this folio edition of Merry Wives of Windsor, and the 1630 printing did correct several errors found in the 1623 version. So in 1623 was the first time that that particular version of the play was printed. In 1630, Meehan printed that particular play, that particular version of the play again, not the 1602 or 1619 versions. He was printing on its own the version of the play that had been printed in the 1623 folio, but as he said on the cover, it was newly corrected. He had made some changes, and in many of the cases, to be fair to him, the changes were corrections. For example, Mistress Ford in the 1623 first folio had said, "What, have scaped?" into, "What, have I scaped?" Also, there was Ford's line, "in change of it." In 1630, Meehan changed that into "exchange of it." These are both corrections that should have been made. 1623 folio was then reprinted in 1632, and it followed the corrections that Meehan had made in the 1630 printing of the Merry Wives of Windsor. So they seem to have rated Meehan's corrections, his changes, very highly. So the question is, if the not, which was inserted by Richard Meehan into the 1630 version, was incorrect, why was it accepted and repeated in the 1632 reprinting of the official 1623 folio? It seems to be a mark in its favour that it appeared in the 1632 reprinting. I'm arguing that the not is misplaced. It's a mistake to include it, but if Meehan inserted it in 1630 and then the reprinted folio included Meehan's version of the line in 1632, I need to show that it's possible that he could have inserted mistakes and that those mistakes would be accepted in 1632. And I can do that. The 1632 folio, i.e. the second folio, did keep a mistake that was inserted into the text for the 1630 printing of the play by Richard Meehan. In the 1623 folio version, Falstaff in Act 1, Scene 3 tells Pistol and Nym to bear you these letters tightly. There we can see it from the 1623 folio, and the relevant word is tightly. Richard Meehan's 1630 version changes this to rightly, bear you these letters rightly, and the 1632 second folio keeps Meehan's change. However, all modern editions you are likely to find are going to use the 1623 version tightly. And this is also found in the 1602 quarto text that I mentioned before. You can see that here. Here, Sirrah, bear me these letters tightly. And the quarto spelling, T-I-T-E-L-Y, helps us here. Tightly is an archaic word that meant quickly or speedily. So the 1623 line is correct. It was bear you these letters tightly. In 1630, in his newly corrected version, Richard Meehan had this as rightly. And in 1632, the second folio was printed with Meehan's correction accepted. Bear you these letters rightly. But modern editions have come to accept that tightly was correct. So Meehan could introduce a mistake into his version that would be reprinted, accepted and reprinted into the 1632 second folio. My solution. The line in the 1623 folio is correct. Mistress Ford wanted her husband to beat Falstaff, and so what she said was, "Nay, good sweet husband, good gentleman, let him strike the old woman." She said no, nay, as the men tried to step in and stop it. She turned to her husband and said, "Good sweet husband, yes." Then turned back to the men, "Good gentleman, let him strike the old woman," facilitating her husband's beating of Falstaff, which 3 times she would say she wanted to see. Richard Meehan mistakenly added a not into this sentence in 1630. This mistaken correction was kept in the 1632 folio, and has been repeated ever since. But the 1632 folio was wrong to keep Meehan's change to this line, just as they were wrong to keep his change from tightly to rightly. Mistress Ford's eagerness to see her husband beat Falstaff may have been distasteful to Meehan. Maybe that's why he put the not in. He thought, Mistress Ford's an upstanding citizen. She can't wish for her husband to be committing violence. She must surely have said, let him not strike the old woman. But, as I've shown, a close reading of the scene shows that it fits with the enthusiasm that Mistress Ford shows for such an eventuality 3 other times in this same scene. These are the other times, of course, so let him strike the old woman fits nicely with, I hope my husband would meet Falstaff dressed up like this, because my husband has threatened to beat the old woman of Brentford. And let him strike the old woman fits with Mistress Ford saying, he will do it, 'tis a goodly credit. Likewise, it fits with her attitude afterwards when Mistress Page can say, oh, your husband beat Falstaff most pitifully, and Mistress Ford can joke, no, he beat him most unpitifully. Okay, now why my solution fits, why the original line, let him strike the old woman, fits so well. We basically have to answer the question, why on earth would Mistress Ford be so keen to see her husband beat Falstaff? Mistress Ford is eager to see her husband beat Falstaff, but why? Well, Ford has been shown to be a very jealous husband. We can see in Act 2, Scene 1, Mistress Ford says that Falstaff's behaviour towards her would give eternal food to my husband's jealousy. Mistress Page says, ah, look where he comes, and my good husband too. My husband, he's as far from jealousy as anything. Mistress Ford says, you are the happier woman then. So we see the 2 husbands being set up as contrasts, and Mistress Ford saying she's unhappy because her husband is so jealous. Later on, Mistress Quickly is talking to Falstaff and describing Mistress Ford and her husband. And she says, oh, Mistress Ford, that sweet woman leads a very ill life with her husband, for he's a very jealous man. And Mistress Ford leads a very frampold, troubled, a very restricted life with him. This even reaches the point where in Act 3, Scene 2, we see Ford bordering on violence. He says down here, now I think I'm going to torture my wife and even pluck the borrowed veil of modesty from the so-seeming Mistress Page. So he'd torture his own wife and also accost his neighbour's wife. But why does Ford's jealousy make Mistress Ford want him to beat Falstaff? Well, for this we need to take a look at contemporary books on household management, and these frowned on domestic violence. We may have some other ideas about domestic situations 400 years ago, but in fact, household management, not for the reasons we'd have today, but they would still frown on domestic violence. According to some such books, and I'm going to quote one soon, whilst the wife should be subservient to the husband, the wife also served as a deputy for the husband, and she had to step into his leading role if the husband was ever away. So she still had to be in charge of servants and children. Therefore, any husband who demeaned his wife was undermining his own authority. In particular, I'm thinking of here Robert Cleaver's Godly Form of Household Government, which is printed in 1598, right around the time of the Merry Wives of Windsor. And he grouped wives and husbands together as governors of the household. These would be distinct from the second grouping, which would be children and servants. And these he classed as those whom should be ruled, those that must be ruled. Cleaver instructed that a husband be not bitter, fierce, and cruel unto his wife. all unhappiness should be weeded out with all lenity, gentleness, and patience. So he had the husband and wife together in one group, and their relationship needed to be cordial and lenient, gentle, and patient. And they could then rule together, with the husband still above the wife, but then together they would rule over children and servants. Ford's desire to torture his wife and also to rip the veil from a woman who wasn't even his wife is socially unacceptable. Ford's jealous and violent tendencies mean that his wife is living a frampold life with him, as Mistress quickly said, in her words, a very frampold life. But now, in Act 4, Scene 2, when he beats Falstaff dressed as the old woman of Brentford, his jealousy and violence is being turned and directed outwards. Remember that the old woman of Brentford, Ford has already banned from his house. So in being in his house, there is a breaking of the rules that he has set out. But now he's not blaming his wife for this. He's turning his ire, his anger, towards the person responsible for the breaking of his rule, the old woman of Brentford, he believed. So his wife is seeing in him a change from that jealous and inwardly looking man who is frampling her life because he doesn't trust her. He's looking outwards, and now he's seeing that the threats are external and he should be directing his violence outwards, not at his wife. So instead of being angry at his wife, he's for these broken rules, whether it's Falstaff's flirting with her or the old woman of Brentford coming to the house when he's barred her, he's expressing anger at the external breakers of his authority, the external threats to his marriage, instead of directing them at Mistress Ford. This is why Mistress Ford is happy to see Ford's new behaviour. It speaks to an unframpled future life for her. And there we see why that knot in her line is so important, and why unravelling that very knotty problem helps us to understand the relationship between Mistress Ford and Ford, and why we can see Mistress Ford being happy for her husband to beat Falstaff, because it indicates a future that is unframpled for her. Thank you very much. Have a good day. Goodbye.